When a state decides to break a man, it rarely arrives in daylight. It comes quietly, in the small humiliations, the whispered threats, the subtle punishments meant to push you back into line. And when you refuse, when you insist on thinking and speaking as a free human being, the pressure grows until one day you realize the impossible. Your homeland now treats you as an enemy. My name is Shimon, and the book I wrote, Fireflies, is not just a story where I went. It's a story why I had to vanish at all. I did not disappear because I committed a crime. I disappeared because I committed the unforgivable sin of dissent. I believed justice mattered. I believed worshipers deserved dignity. I believed that truth should not be crushed simply because it's inconvenient to power. That was enough to mark me. In 1990, I vanished into cracks between nations. I crossed the desert at night. I was captured, interrogated, beaten, released, hunted again. And still, I kept moving, not toward freedom, but away from danger that never seemed to let go. This book was not written in comfort. I wrote parts of it on freight trains, clinging to steel rails with the Canadian wind cutting through my clothes. Other parts were written in tiny rented rooms where every sound outside the door felt like the beginning of another nightmare. I crossed borders with no papers. I slept in fields and forests. I waited for sunrise as if it were a miracle, and through all of it I wrote, because the truth was the only weapon left to me. But I want to say something clearly. This is not a story of defeat. If it were, I would not be here speaking today. This is a story of fire. The fire of a man who refused to surrender his conscience. The fire of a soul that chose danger over silence, wilderness over corruption, and freedom, however fragile, over obedience to a system built on fear. There were moments I truly believed I would not survive. Moments in deserts, in interrogation rooms, in the cold belly of freight trains. And then there were moments unexpected, almost holy, like that night in Manitoba, when I jumped off a moving train and landed in tall grass. I looked up and saw fireflies swirling all around me, glowing like living prayers in the dark. That moment stayed with me. It reminded me that even in fear, even in exile, life still insisted on light. The memoir carries all of that, the danger, the escape, the betrayal, the brutality, the rare kindness of strangers, the long journey toward a place where I could finally breathe again. But more than anything, this book is a warning about what can happen when a citizen stands up to a powerful state, a warning about the cost of dissent, a warning written by someone who lived through it and refused to stay silent. It is also a protest against injustice, against fear, against the idea that a human being must bow his head to survive. And finally, it is a flame I carried with me through deserts, borders, freight yards, bus stations, and lonely nights in the wilderness. A flame that refused to die despite everything thrown at it. Today, I pass that flame to you. If you choose to read Fireflies, and are knowing that every page was paid for, in fear and exhaustion, in stubborn belief that truth must eventually be spoken, this is my testimony, my protest, and the fire I now leave in your hands. When a story begins with fire, you feel it immediately. And this book, Fireflies, opens with a force that doesn't ask for permission. It draws you straight into a world of danger, conviction, and betrayal, told with a voice that refuses to flinch. What you're about to hear is not just a memoir. It is a political survival story with teeth. From the first page, the tone is unmistakable, prophetic, personal, and uncompromising. You can hear the wounds, but you can also hear the strength of someone who has endured and stayed standing. There is nothing vague here, nothing softened. Every word feels lived, not imagined. The voice grabs you because it carries authority. When the author says, "I disappeared," or "I became a target," you believe it. When he says he wrote chapters with danger still close, you feel the closeness of that danger. This clarity, this honesty, is what gives the book its power. The themes rise straight to the surface and stay there. Persecution by the state, moral dissent, exile, survival, identity, betrayal, and above all, defiance. These are not whispered ideas. They are the foundation stones of the entire book, spoken with conviction of someone who lived them, paid for them, and refused to surrender them. And the stakes? They are as real as it gets. Interrogations, assassins, hidden rooms, freight trains crossing the continent in the dead of night, borders crossed without papers. The tension never lets go. You feel the pressure on every page. You feel the danger breathing down his neck. Yet the story reaches beyond the personal. It becomes universal. It becomes a warning, not just from one man to the world, but from experience to conscience. It signals what can happen when a state, any state, decides that one of its own citizens is thinking too much, speaking too loudly, or daring to question the narrative. That universality is what gives this book its contemporary relevance. This is not simply a private journey of escape and survival. It is a message about power, about freedom, about the cost of dissent in any society. The opening of this memoir stands squarely within the tradition of political exile literature, urgent, defiant, and deeply human. It speaks to readers who care about justice, human rights, whistleblowers, Middle Eastern politics, and psychological endurance. And because the voice is so seasoned, so direct, so unwilling to sugarcoat anything, it avoids a trap of melodrama. It stays real. It stays grounded. And it hits harder because of that. This is a story told by someone who lived through fire and is now willing to tell you exactly what it felt like, without flinching. Fireflies begins exactly where it should, with truth, with danger, and with a warning passed from one survivor to anyone willing to listen. If you're ready to enter a world where conviction can cost you everything, where survival becomes an act of resistance, and where one man's voice stands against the machinery of a state, then this book is waiting for you. In late 1986, I sent a secret transmission to the fax line of the American Embassy in Tel Aviv. The message consisted of 2 pages. The first was a typed letter I had prepared the day before. The second was a black and white photograph of Rocky Marciano in a boxing ring. A silent hint, a code, a way of pointing to my identity, without naming it outright. The letter was addressed to Justice Sandra Day O'Connor of the United States Supreme Court. I had no access to her office number, and so I sent it through the embassy, knowing the CIA was always present in American embassies across the world. I took every precaution. I drove into the center of Tel Aviv and chose a random office supply shop that offered fax services. From there, just a few blocks from the embassy itself, I transmitted the pages. When I finished, I destroyed the originals, burning them so they would never fall into another's hands. The words I sent were of historic magnitude. The Honorable Justice O'Connor, I wish to expose a great deception called the State of Israel. The country that only a few decades ago unleashed a whirlwind upon the world is now running a deceptive entity called the State of Israel. The deception is so vast it seems unbelievable, but all you must do is look from above and you will see. This entity serves as a remote nuclear arm of Germany. The entire justice system in Israel is run by German-oriented judges and clerks. The parliament is filled with German-oriented members. The president is a puppet. The police are commanded by appointees of German origin. The IDF is under control of officers with German ties. All public transport is German-made. The entire media, radio, television, and newspapers is controlled by German-oriented personnel. The nation that devastated Europe only decades ago now commands an arsenal of nuclear weapons. This is a deception of biblical proportion. The world is falling for it. Justice will prevail. I did not expect an answer. I only wanted the information to be planted, to rise perhaps to higher levels than the embassy clerks. I released it like a spark and left it to the winds of fate. This was in 1986, 2 years before I lost my anonymity to the Israeli authorities.